Hey folks, Hyper-V has long been a tried and true virtualization solution, not just for the SMB space, but for enterprise as well. I mean, Azure runs Hyper-V under the hood, right? And so it's a fantastic virtualization solution. That can't always be said about Hyper-V management tools. Now, with so many new administrators stepping into the Hyper-V space because of drama going on over at Broadcom, a lot of administrators are asking themselves questions like, okay, I guess I should use this Hyper-V Manager thing, right? Whoa, wait, I have to manage clusters with Failover Cluster Manager? What about System Center Virtual Machine Manager? That's the vCenter equivalent, right? What about Windows Admin Center? How about PowerShell? What's this new Azure Arc thing for management? So you see where administrators run into problems very quickly when it comes to managing Hyper-V. So to kind of dispel some of the mysteriousness around this particular topic, I've got Eric Siren back on the show today, and we're going to dive into Hyper-V management tools. Which ones you should use, when you should use them, and which ones are worth more of your time than others. So that and lots more in today's episode of SysAdmin Weekly. It's a new week. That means it's time for SysAdmin Weekly. This is your podcast by sysadmins for sysadmins, dedicated to all the tireless tech folks out there working in the trenches and toiling, and that's pretty much what I say every week, right? But it's true. You're toiling every week and sweating and keeping the digital world spinning. So, I mean, that never changes. Hence, my intro is never going to change, right? So, anyway. I'm your host, Andy Serwich, and just like usual, we have Eric Siren on. How's it going, Eric?
Hey, Andy. How you doing, man?
Doing good. We've, I feel like many of the topics you and I choose to discuss on this show are topics that we have discussed over a beer at some point in the past. And so you and I have spent a lot of time talking about this particular topic today. And of course, we are talking about the management story behind Hyper-V. So there's a lot of confusion, especially for folks coming over from the VMware space, because there's a plethora of management tools. And there I go using the plethora word again. So I don't know.
You're not wrong, though, so you might as well.
It works. Where I got that was from, you ever seen the movie Three Amigos? Like Chevy Chase and Martin. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
A plethora of piñatas. So I don't know. It's always in the back of my mind for some reason.
Oh, my brain always goes to, there's a Dr. Demento skit. Bulbous Bouffant is the name of it, and they just find words that are fun to say. And plethora comes up.
Plethora is one of them. Anyway.
Yes.
So there's a lot of different management tools. So that's what we're going to get into in today's episode. But before we do that, we've got our usual housekeeping items. I would like to remind all of our listeners to check out the newsletter. You can find that at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. And every week we post a bunch of cool stuff, useful community links, useful tools. I do a big editorial set, not big, but nice size editorial section, not so much that you're going to go to sleep at the beginning, for example. So last week I talked about preparing for the worst type of thing as a sysadmin. So, we're always having to prepare for the worst, right? What if our data center generator goes offline and we lose power? Or what if the server room floods, which has happened to me before? That's a whole other story. I'm going to have to save that for our October SysAdmin Horror Stories episode that I've got in the works. So anyway, we're always planning for the worst. So that was kind of what my editorial section was in last week's newsletter, along with, like I said, a bunch of other great stuff. And it's a nice, easy place to get all the latest links associated with the show. So again, you can check that out at newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. We're also, just a reminder here, we're available on several different platforms. YouTube, which you might be watching on right now, but we're also out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, as well as Amazon. So that's that's the housekeeping there, the plugs. But now we get into our two regular recurring segments, and the first is our News React segment. And so, Eric, I feel like I'm always going first for the News React segment. So I'm going to let you go first on this one. What do you got?
Well, I don't think anyone remembers who goes first. I think it's fine. I
You're probably right.
I know I don't remember. Uh, I have watched with some horror again as the layoffs continue across our industry, and trying to take the deep breath on it is kind of looking at a lot of middle managers and saying, "Wow, y'all don't really do much here, do you?" and getting rid of them, which I don't know how fair that is, because I'm thinking about the middle managers above me, and a lot of them, yeah, they spend all day in meetings and such, but they do that and so that I don't have to and I can get things done, and that's yeah. But the one that stood out was Intel. This has been a corner of the entire technology industry for not my oh yeah, actually probably my entire time in the industry.
Long time.
I don't think I remember a time without them. So my first home computer that was not one of the castaways that didn't survive was a 286. So yeah. Um anyway, so yeah, they're in trouble, and not only are they laying off massive amounts of people, they're also their credit rating was downgraded. So this is not a positive sign for Intel.
No.
And on a personal note, if any company's going to go under, that's fine with me. Buy Intel. I'm not going to miss them, but it is strange. It's strange to rage against the machine and then watch the machine actually fold under. Like, that doesn't usually happen. So
Right. I don't know. It's been weird watching Intel over the last couple of years, because it's like ARM hit the marketplace and really shook things up. And I feel like I've been waiting this whole time for Intel to do something.
yes,
It just feels like they've continued doing what they've been doing for the last 20
yeah.
years, and they're just like, yeah, we're Intel. Yeah, nothing bad's going to happen
Nothing bad's
today,
going to
you
happen to
know?
us. 100%.
So
And
it's,
they had like, and I don't know, and I'm gonna maybe there's some people out there that will connect with this. I remember when I had to work on an Intel NetPort Express. Do you know what that is? That
I've
is
heard the name.
it is the probably one of the few things that ever competed with the HP JetDirect. You know what that is?
Okay, I'm with you
Yeah,
now. Yep,
it's the network device. You take a
yep.
non-networkable printer, you plug into it, and it's basically it's kind of like a print server, I guess. It'd be about the closest thing you're going to get to for its time. It was late '90s that came up. That thing was the worst thing I ever ran into. I mean, it was so bad, so horrible. Just we all complain about printers. Well, if you haven't had to work with the Intel NetPort Express, then you're a one up. You know, and then I got into Intel network adapters. Like, man, they're really bad at this whole networking thing just across the board. And then I got to thinking, like, I wonder if their CPUs are really not great either. It's just that we don't really have anyone to compare them to. I'd always kind of wondered about that. And now I'm starting to find out, yeah, you know what? Maybe they just kind of hit a level of mediocrity that made them happy and stopped. Like, yeah, we're good here.
Yep.
So, but the other,
I
and going back to like a previous episode we had, something I'd said about the layoffs then too is I notice a lot of the CEOs involved in this stuff are people who've never actually like done real jobs and stuff. And so their entire thing, they don't really get it. Like when they let somebody go, it's like, well, you just get another CEO job somewhere else, just like I do. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh-huh.
They don't really
Okay.
think about that. Like that doesn't really process. And you notice Intel's kind of been cycling. They had a few folks with really long tenures, and then they kind of got into this revolving door of CEOs. Like they don't really know what they're doing, so they have no real vision, no real direction.
Right.
Uh, yeah, it just kind of seems like it's just winding down and winding out because they don't know how to survive in the world basically that they created, which is interesting.
Yeah, no
Sorry, I've been
joke.
cutting you off here, but go ahead.
No, 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 you're fine. I was just gonna say, I can tell you the moment where I lost faith in Intel. This happened years ago. Um, Back when the M1 chip came out on the Apple side. So I had a laptop that was top end. It was the like the best laptop you could get at the time. Had an i7, I forget what generation Intel in it. And like this laptop should have been floating off the desk because it had that much horsepower in it, right? But that thing was just dog slow. And I can't tell you how much time I spent trying to optimize and try different drivers. And I, and then as an experiment, I went out and I bought the entry level Mac Mini. The entry level, like the cheapest Mac Mini I could go into the Apple Store and get. And that thing ran circles around that Intel. I mean, it was no comparison whatsoever. And it was silent while it did it. That was the big thing for me because, like, this laptop I had, I mean, it sounded like a jet engine on my desk, you know? It's, Anyway, granted, it's probably the culmination of not just Intel, but all the other pieces that were in this particular model. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the processor was Intel, right? Anyway.
You got
So,
further into the world than I did before I got, like, I don't. Mm-mm.
well, I can go way. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think the moment when I really was done with Intel is when their reaction to when the AMD Athlon was released.
Oh,
What was
goes way
that?
back.
Like
Yep.
97, 98,
It was
something
like
like
the
that.
Pentium 3 era, if I remember correctly.
Yes, it would be.
Yep.
It would be. Those were when we had your CPU, your Intel CPU came as a slot thing. It looked like
It was
a Nintendo
seven.
cage.
Yep.
Yeah, and you could get in there and had the Celeron, what, 500 was it, or 250? I don't
Yep.
know. And you'd get in there and draw a little pencil line on it, stick it back in, and it would you could like double the. It's funny now watching people like, oh, I overclocked it. My CPU, like, oh, how much? Like, oh, 5%. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, we were 50, 100% in those days, and
in those days, there were no thermal safeguards in place either, which was
no, and if you
a good
popped it,
time.
oh no. But I did. I blew up a Thunderbird. I blew up an AMD Thunderbird. Oh, and you could, yeah, it was not good.
Oh, good times. We're gonna have to do an episode about the old gear that we started with, right? I think there's an episode there just for fun. So I'll have to talk about the old 486 I cut my teeth on. I was a little guy then, but old enough to.
It's hilarious you say you cut your teeth on, because I was just thinking, the old stuff. Remember the kit that, like, you would put your hands into the chassis and pull them out, and they would be covered in.
Yup.
What happened? You look like you got in a fight with Freddy Krueger. Like, what is going on?
Man, those old steel cases, man, those things didn't mess around. I'm telling you. Anyway, I'm gonna get us back on the rails here. So, yeah, that's a good one. And I hate to see people get laid off, but
yeah, absolutely.
Intel, I feel like they've kind of done it to themselves, unfortunately. So
yeah, as a company, and of course, I don't really know any of the people who've been there. I've had some interaction with Intel that were alarmingly negative. Like, wow, you guys are really stuck on yourselves. But that was never. I don't know how many people in there. Yeah.
Unfortunate. Well, moving on to my news item, and of course, everybody knows that, hey, Andy's going to pick a security news item. Big surprise! Well, I always do, because that's through the lens I view the world through. So I work a lot with M365 in my day job, and I use it for a lot of things myself, right? So there is a new kind of sophisticated attack going around now where attackers are abusing the 365 direct send feature to deliver emails to a target in a way that they appear to be coming from that target's internal domain. So that instantly creates a layer of trust, right? Oh yeah, it's from my domain. This must be safe, right? And I'm not going to go through the entire attack chain because, like I said, it's kind of complicated. It involves some unsecured SMTP relays as well. I'm going to put the link to I'm going to put the link to that in the show notes. If you are not using direct send in 365, turn it off. Turn it off. That's your easiest, quickest mitigation right there, is if you are not using direct send, turn it off. So that's my news story. We'll leave that one short and sweet, but just something to be aware of for all those 365 sysadmins out there. So with that, let's get to our other regular recurring segment, and that is Nerd Hour. And this is the time of the show where we don't spend a whole hour, but we talk about the nerdy things that we've been doing maybe in our day jobs, maybe as a hobby on the side. But I'll go first for this one, Eric. I sat down a couple weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I don't remember what. And I'm a big fan of the Pomodoro method. If If you're not familiar with what Pomodoro method is, folks, it's this kind of deep work focus thing where you do 25 minutes, deep focus on a task, 5-minute break. 25 minutes, 5-minute break. Do that 4 times, and you get like 50 minutes off after that, right? So it's designed to give you dedicated deep work segments of a meaningful amount of time. Now, I, for a long time, have not been happy with any of the Pomodoro timers out there. There are all kinds of timers on app stores. They're flashy. They have all kinds of gadgets and screens I don't need, and ads, for God's sakes. I've not been happy with any desktop ones. And folks on the show know that I use Linux a lot of the time, but I also use Mac OS as my daily driver. So I'm always in that Unix world. And I was shocked to find that there was not a CLI based Pomodoro timer that was natively installable either via apt in the Debian world. I didn't see one in Brew on Mac OS either. So I'm like, you know what? My Python is really rusty, but I'm going to go make one. So I went and made one in Python. And it's basic. It asks you, hey, what are you going to work on for the next 25 minutes? It just logs it to a text file in your home directory. And that's it. That's all it does. And then it uses the terminal bell to notify you when, your session's over. And so a full disclaimer, like I said, my Python's rusty. I wrote most of the code. I had AI fill in a few gaps for me because I don't remember the last time I wrote Python, but it works. And I actually published it out to GitHub as an official open source project. So I'll put that in the show notes. So yeah, I figure that might be useful to somebody else who is as disgruntled with all the mainstream Pomodoro timers as I was. So anyway, that's my nerdy thing I've been working on. Eric, how about you, my friend?
Well, I'm envious of people who can use the Pomodoro method. I have tried. Maybe someday we'll have a nice little chat about all the. Maybe I'll give a helpful tip for how to survive with ADHD in this fun world that we all live in. And Pomodoro makes me well. Of course, I have anxiety too. So ADHD and ADHD plus anxiety plus Pomodoro is me sitting there freaking out about that timer.
There's a
Because
timer.
nothing
It's
else
counting
can
down.
happen. Nothing else can happen.
I could see that. I could see it. Yeah.
Or I'll hit something that triggers the hyper focus is what we call it in the ADHD world, where so either we can't get it together or we can't get off of it. There's not a whole lot
Right.
of, and so if that timer goes off, then I'll be like, where's the snooze button? Because I can't stop now. I can't stop now. Where's the snooze button? So yeah, the Pomodoro would never work for me, but but I could see myself getting all head down onto the weeds of this making the Pomodoro thing. Like, do you ever run into when you were doing it, like I just run into a place, well, it just never seems good enough. And then just abandon it. Like, fine, whatever. This is as good as I can get it.
It's funny you mention that because the second I published it on GitHub and made an official version tag for it, I'm like, oh, it should do this and this and this. I added 4 issues to the repo within 10 minutes of actually publishing it. So someday when I'm feeling motivated and have spare time, which, haha, Andy having spare time, that's something, I'll get to it. Or it's open source, folks. So, I mean, you could go take a look at those issues, and if
have at it, folks. Yeah,
that's right. Have at it.
Well,
so,
mine has been much more or much less earth shattering. So we've talked several times. I'm moving and finally got to a place where I thought, well, I can work on my nerd stuff. So I think I've only really talked about it on LinkedIn, but I put together that 4-node. It's going to be a storage spaces direct cluster.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Writing based on, and I bought all the equipment for that. It's coming up on a year ago, and it's still not even clustered yet. Well, I finally managed to get it all physically connected and plugged up, and then I got it. Well, my hyper focus locked in. I can't have a what do you call it, the true NAS.
Oh, yeah.
What I'm talking about. That's where I'm using for storage, and every time I reboot it, it loses its connection to Active Directory, and I'm just like, I don't even really care because that's not what it's it doesn't really matter, but I
Right.
just can't seem to get my brain to stop worrying about it. Like, what? That should work. And so, anyway, yeah, good times, but not quite as earth shattering as yours, but at least I finally have all my hardware connected and turned on, and electricity is flowing, and
Well,
Windows
I'm not
boot.
sure. I'm not sure mine is earth shattering. It's just I'm not sure how many other terminal nerds like me there are out there that wants to have. I I'm gonna have to do a blog post on my like my writing setup now. I used Ghosty for my terminal, and I have it broken up into 3 panes. The left-hand side is whatever markdown document I'm working on. The right-hand side is for lists and or markdown render previews. Then I have a little tiny one at the bottom right. That's where my Pomodoro timer runs. So,
I can't
and
believe
of course,
the number is 0. There's got to be somebody out there going, I got to check that out.
yeah, maybe there is. I like it because it's like there's no UI elements. I put it in full screen. It's like Zen mode for me, you know? So, anyway. All right. Well, what do you think, Eric? Should we talk Hyper-V?
We should probably do that since we promised we would.
That's right, we did. And of course, as a reminder, folks, we are getting into our main segment of the episode today, and we are talking about the management story of Hyper-V. And there might be some VMware folks out there that are like, well, it's a hypervisor. Just open the management tool and manage it. If only it was that simple. If only it was that simple. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten a phone call because I used to do, in addition to my day job, I used to do some contracting stuff for companies in the region where I live. I can't tell you how many times I would get phone calls from businesses picking up the phone and saying, Hyper-V cluster is down, help. And most of the time, it was because they had some fundamental misunderstanding of how to manage Hyper-V.
Right.
And in their defense, Microsoft doesn't necessarily make it easy. Because, I mean, when you look at the different management tools for Hyper-V, and we're going to talk about each of these, but you have Hyper-V Manager, which is the stereotypical MMC snap-in, right? Which has been around forever. You have Failover Cluster Manager, which, if I was a Hyper-V newbie, I look at Failover Cluster Manager, I would never dream that I would manage my Hyper-V cluster from Failover Cluster Manager, but you do. You have System Center Virtual Machine Manager, which, if you like System Center, I'm sorry. In advance, Eric and I are probably going to dunk on SCVMM during this episode. Disclaimer, FYI, it's probably going to happen. Then you have Windows Admin Center, which is kind of the modern web-based management tool that was designed to replace MMC, but I haven't seen it happen yet, nor do I see it happening anytime soon. And then we have this new idea. Well, it's not an idea, it's tangible, but this new method where you can manage on-premises resources via Azure Arc using Azure's control plane. Oh, and there's one on here that I didn't explicitly put on my list because it ties into all of these tools, and that, of course, is PowerShell. PowerShell spans all of these in some way, shape, or form. So when you get right down to it, I mean, how many are we talking about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different methods for managing Hyper-V? Which the question always is like, where do I start? Somebody who's just getting started, where do I start with management? And I can't blame them for having that question. It's confusing, and there's no playbook anywhere. You can get on the Learn Docs, learn.microsoft.com. You go out to Docs, and I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything in Docs that says, "Hey, getting started. Okay, you have a single host. Use Hyper-V Manager." There's nothing out there that kind of points the way for new Hyper-V administrators. So I figure, Eric, what we could do is we could start with Hyper-V Manager. But before I do that, I want to give you a chance to jump in if there's anything you want to add before we move on to that.
No, let's just jump right on in, man. I think you laid it out very well.
Sounds good. So Hyper-V Manager, like I said earlier, that is your long-standing Hyper-V management utility. It's an MMC snap-in. It's been around forever. forever and ever and ever since Hyper-V first came out, if I remember correctly.
2008
And
Windows 7.
yeah, exactly. And to be honest, I really like Hyper-V Manager. It's functional, it's clean, it works, does exactly what I need it to do. I can get in, do my stuff, and get out. Simple, right? Where it starts to have issues is when you start managing clusters, multiple hosts at a time, that type of thing. But if I have a standalone Hyper-V host or a collection of standalone Hyper-V hosts, it's pretty tough to beat Hyper-V Manager for simplicity. And like I said, it does exactly what you need it to do. So I it's pretty self-explanatory, easy to learn. I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add about Hyper-V Manager, but it's definitely where I direct people to who are just getting started with Hyper-V. So
A
I
lot,
don't know if
lot
you
of,
have any thoughts.
oh, mainly the big thing is it looks exactly the way it did in 2008. They have added
Yes.
little dings here for, the new features as they come out, but it hasn't really gotten any love at all. So,
Right.
um,
And
there's
I was going to say,
something to be said for presentation. And so, like a lot of people coming over from VMware, what they want is vSphere. That's what they want. And
yep, yep,
you're not getting that. Not
no,
even close. And even though I'm one of the people like I just need to get my job done, I don't really care about all the flowers and whatnot.
same.
It's still there's kind of a feeling that, well, at least they tried. Where on this one, okay, it works.
Yeah, it works, and I agree. It it doesn't look great because it's exactly the same as it was back in 2008. And I mean, to be honest, I kind of like it that way because I don't know.
It's
Maybe I'm
simple, it's clean, it's all the things that you
yeah,
said. It really is. There's just a sort of it's jarring for people who are coming over from vSphere or
exactly.
I don't know what else is out there, but it kind of what's this?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and this is we're not faulting the people coming over from VMware at all. I mean,
Right.
at one point in time, Eric and I were both Hyper-V MVPs with Microsoft, and these are complaints that we have. I don't want to speak for you, Eric, but like I agree with VMware administrators coming over and being super frustrated with the management story because vSphere, in my opinion, was vCenter, vSphere, the whole suite was that was kind of VMware's secret sauce,
It really
right? I
was.
mean, they
That's how
made
they
it so easy to manage.
and a lot of it was that it with VMware they were able to start off with their they had their virtualization product, they had to manage it, and then they really that's what they did. They just grew from that point up
Yeah.
and out. Where Microsoft came at it with from a completely different angle.
Yeah.
So if you think about the evolution of VMware's products versus Microsoft's virtualization and clustering products, it makes sense why we are where we are today. But again, let's go back to those poor folks who are like, well, I was doing vSphere and I had vCenter and I had all the everything just plugged in and it was all the same. And I come over here and look at what is this?
Right.
And I don't fault them at all. They're
No. And the unfortunate thing that does is it helps perpetuate this myth that Hyper-V is in no way, shape, or form on par with VMware. I think that's where VMware has always come out on top is the management story, right? Hyper-V, in my opinion, is just as good as VMware. It's just you have to learn its nuances of management, right? And to your point, kind of understanding how we ended up where we are with the management story. Microsoft came out with Hyper-V. They already had failover clustering as I always forget. Is that a role or a feature? I always forget which one it is in Windows Server. I think it's
I'm pretty sure it's a role, but who
yeah,
cares? It doesn't matter.
yeah. Anyway, so they already have this clustering mechanism, and so they're like, well, we're just going to use that for Hyper-V as well too to fail over virtual machines between cluster nodes. And so that brings me to the next point here, right? It's like, okay, now I'm at a point in my environment where maybe I have a couple of Hyper-V hosts and I want to cluster them for things like high availability and for VM mobility. In the the VMware world, that was vMotion. In the Hyper-V world, is called live migration, right? And it's the same thing, lets you move a virtual machine live from one host to the other. And that's all baked into the failover clustering role. And so this is one of the common places where I see people get confused is once you have a failover cluster with 2 or more Hyper-V nodes in it, now you use Failover Cluster Manager to do the management.
Some
If
of
you're
it.
sticking, right,
Some
some of
of
it,
it. That's
some
where it
of it.
gets even more fun. Keep going.
Yep. This is in the case where, again, you're sticking with kind of those legacy management tools, right? But, things like node balancing, settings like that are going to be contained in Failover Cluster Manager. Where do you configure quorum, right? So quorum is like, how many nodes, how many objects can go down before the cluster is deemed to be in a failed state, right? And if you have a 2-node cluster, well, you need some sort of third entity, either a disk witness in the quorum or you need a cloud witness. I've never been a fan of the cloud witness myself, Eric, because I've just never. I've always felt like internet connections are a little bit too flaky, and it's not that hard to set up a disk, a disk witness in a cluster. But so yeah, you kind of have all that stuff is contained in Failover Cluster Manager. You can, do the equivalent of putting nodes into maintenance mode in Failover Cluster Manager. You can, evacuate VMs off of a node. All that cluster stuff is contained there. But to your point, Eric, yes, there are a few things that you still have to use Hyper-V Manager for, or PowerShell as another example you could do as well. So, I don't know if there's anything more I want to dive into there on my side. Any specific gotchas you want to point out?
Well, let's go the other way. I'm going to throw a bone here. I will say if you learn how to make a cluster in ESXi vSphere, right? You know how to cluster
Yep.
there, you can't transfer that knowledge anywhere. If you know how to make a cluster of Hyper-V machines, you also know how to make a cluster of SQL instances
Yep.
and file
Very
servers,
true.
and it's all the same stuff. So that is the one kind of place where, and this has happened to me. I learned how to I learned how to cluster Hyper-V first, and then I got put in a place where I needed to help some people with SQL clusters. And I was ready. Like, oh yeah, I
Yep.
get this. I get that. There was nothing I had to learn there. So it's nice to have that transferable knowledge. So, and
Yeah,
if you're
for
coming
sure.
in with, well, I've done SQL, I've done file servers in Microsoft failover clustering, cool. You're 99% of the way there. Hyper-V clusters
Exactly.
are easier than the others.
Yep.
So, as far as gotchas, though, not really much, to be honest with you. It's mostly if you can't find a setting in Failover Cluster Manager for a VM, then the next thing to do is pop up Hyper-V Manager and see if it's there.
Yep. The one gotcha I just thought of, I want to make sure I point out here, is with cluster shared volumes. Now, a cluster shared volume, you could almost picture it as like a shared data store inside of vSphere.
Uh-huh.
So what the CSV does, cluster shared volume, is it's a cluster specific file system that runs underneath a failover cluster, and its whole job is to act as traffic cop when you have multiple nodes that might be writing to the same spot at a given time. And I'm going to give you a perfect example here of why you have to make sure you have a CSV in place. I got a phone call one time where a guy was like, Andy, I just moved to Hyper-V. My domain controller keeps corrupting for some reason. Help. He somehow managed to cluster 2 nodes in Hyper-V without putting a CSV into place. He had presented a LUN off of his SAN directly to each node. And so the 2 nodes were fighting over those blocks on the LUN that he had presented from the SAN. And so you had blocks getting overwritten. And so NTFS was like, whoa, hey, I don't know how to deal with this, and goes belly up, So the cluster shared volume is designed to prevent that exact situation. So make sure you have a cluster shared volume in place when you start doing clustering. That's the one gotcha I could think of. Otherwise, like you said, there's not many,
No,
so.
I'm curious how he did that. That's
I
pretty hard
know.
to do.
It's not easy to do that.
Yeah, he really got way in the weeds and really
Yep. It is
because
not easy to do that.
it does have some. I could say, well, no, I could see how you could do it without clustering. Like if you just had two hosts pointed to the
And I
same line, that might do it.
and I wonder if that's what he did. He did that before he enabled clustering, so that LUN was presented to each of the nodes pre-clustering.
Yeah, and
I
if you need to do that now, then you would do it with an SMB share.
yes.
That actually
Yep.
does work, and I'm. It's kind of interesting now you pointed out. I never really thought through all the things that have to not go wrong in order for that to work, but they don't go wrong. It's fine. You can have multiple Hyper-V hosts targeting the same SMB location, no
Yep.
cluster. They won't override each other. They all get along.
Yep.
Everybody's happy.
That's the beauty
So,
of
but I guess
SMB right
that's
there.
the job of that. Yeah, it's SMB's job. That's why it's not crazy.
Yep.
That's what it does. So,
Yep. For sure. Well, the next thing we should talk about, because I kind of grouped these by age, I guess. And so we're kind of coming towards the end of what I would consider to be like the legacy management tools, and that is System Center Virtual Machine Manager. Now, where do I start with this? System Center is, how would you classify the System Center suite, Eric? I would say it's a collection of enterprise, well, alleged enterprise grade management utilities for managing Microsoft solutions at large scale. I'm not sure I agree with that saying, but I think that's how Microsoft would present it.
yeah, they might. But as far as I'm concerned, it's the participation trophy of data center management. It's not. And part of it is they started off so well. They really great
Yeah.
coming out of the gates. And then in 2012, they decided, well, we're going to have unified pricing. We're going to put all the System Center products under one label. You buy one, you bought them all. And now all of a sudden, nobody's sure. It's just like it doesn't make sense. So there's just one
Yep.
bucket of money and all the different products, and of course they can check their usage and tell you. I'm sure SCOM is by far the either be SCOM or so System Center Operations Manager or System Center Config Manager. One of those
I
two
was
is
going to say
probably the
config
breadwinner.
manager. Yeah, I could see
It's a
config manager being up there.
Yeah, this kind of depends on, yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. But the others are just kind of the also rans. Data Protection Manager is awful. I'm sorry. It was never good and it only got
Nope.
worse.
Nope.
And I never used Orchestrator, so I will be quiet. I don't know. Then VMM is I think it's the only other one, right?
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
And it peaked with the 2008 R2 release, and I was excited when they announced 2012. I'm like, yay, it's going to be great. And it wasn't. And
It wasn't.
it wasn't. And I really feel like the entire suite is just on life support, which is sad
Yeah.
because it's so expensive. We put so much
Yeah.
money into it as customers, and they just kind of like, all right, well, the Hyper-V team came up with a new product. And um, this is something I feel like a lot of people outside of Microsoft don't really get either. Is Microsoft is a large company. That part we all understand, but when it's like, well, the Hyper-V team means something different to me and you than it does to a lot of other people, and that VMM is not the Hyper-V team. And
Nope.
the Hyper-V manager is not really the Hyper-V team. It kind of isn't. A Failover Cluster Manager is not, right? So there are all these different teams responsible for different things. And it's pretty easy for somebody on the Hyper-V team to come up with something that's really awesome and not get any traction with it or any meaningful amount of traction with it on the VMM team
Yeah.
and be able to. So this is, yeah, it's a big company with a lot of politics, just like every other big company with a lot of politics. I want to not throw them under the bus too hard, but also, you know,
Yeah.
call a spade, I think is kind of the how that phrase
Right.
goes, you know?
Right. Yeah, exactly. And you know, I think the thing that frustrates me about VMM, SCVMM, we call it VMM for short because it's, two characters shorter, right? Big difference. Anyway, the thing that frustrates me about VMM is when you look at it on paper, it should be great, right? It should be amazing because it does some cool things, right? So you think about the it's blanking on me. Resource pools in VMware. That functionality is baked into System Center Virtual Machine Manager, where if I am an enterprise Hyper-V cluster administrator and I have, I don't know, a finance team with their own like virtualization administrator on it, I can carve off resources that administrator can use at their leisure, right? They don't have to come ask me for anything. They can carve off as many VMs as they want within those resource limitations that I apply. That's a really cool feature for those people that need it. The other thing you get with SCVMM that you, well, I don't want to say that you don't. I'm not sure this is entirely true anymore, but at one point in time, some of your more advanced network configurations could only be done with SCVMM. But
I
now
believe
we
that's all moved
have,
in.
it's all in SDN. It's all in software defined networking now. So like,
Yeah, I don't think
that's
there's
not
anything left.
even, yeah.
No,
So at this
they did
stage,
this.
like, sorry, go ahead.
No, you finish.
I
At
was
the
just
state,
saying, I was just going to say at this stage, I'm not sure what I would ever recommend SCVMM for at this stage. You know what I mean?
while you still have what you were talking about, you have more of the role-based access
Yeah, right.
kind of
True.
things where I can come in and go, okay, so this group owns these virtual machines, so they can start them up, spin them down, but they can't mess with the host in any way.
Yep.
So that's kind of nice now, because your only alternative to that is PowerShell constrained delegation. And then I
Right.
even say that, and people are like, "That's a lot of words. What? What?" I like it, but I get it. I get it. People,
Yeah.
no, 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 I don't want to do that. And that's fair. And then something else I used one time and never again. Something called services, which the name is
Mm,
awful. Obviously, I
yeah.
mean that already has like three definitions in the world of Windows, and but you can go in and say, okay, I have an exchange service. So you have your front ends and your database, and I forget all the different tiers that you have in
Yeah.
Exchange, right? And you can say, so when I build the Exchange service, it has four front ends and two databases and three exchangers or
Yeah.
whatever. And so then you can literally go click and deploy that. And now, boom, they have an Exchange environment running already. And then the reason I stopped using it is if you delete that, then it literally like all those virtual machines are exploded and gone. The virtual disks are deleted. Everything's just gone, and you have to manage it as a
Oh
solitary.
man,
And that was like, okay.
that's poor design right there.
It sounds good on paper and it's nice because it's kind of like templating multiple virtual machines at once, and you can deploy super fast. And then it kind of bit. The problem though is how many times am I ever going to just like I want a full Exchange environment? Boom. Like,
The
mm-mm.
only situation I could see is if maybe you're a hoster, right? And
Yeah.
you've got predefined services that you spin up for customers. I could see it being really useful in that
Yes.
situation, but
Yes. Which is like 3% of the people with VMM. So,
right. Yeah.
and I wonder if any of them are actually doing that. But the whole thing of oops, I deleted it and I didn't realize what was happening. And all those virtual machines are literally completely and fully destroyed. Like, oh, that was no. And it doesn't really ask you very much before you go scorched earth on an
And
entire
I mean,
deployment.
the service for all intents and purposes, the service in quotes, for all intents and purposes, like you said, is a template. So like I would think the same thing as like, oh, this is just a template. It's independent of the VMs that it rolled out. Nope. Service is gone, VMs are gone. Yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, and if you are a hoster and you just deleted the Exchange template,
That's not great. So
what do
anyway,
you call that, Andy? You call that the resume generating event? Isn't that the
that
phrase
is
you
a
use?
RGE, a resume generating event for sure. So yeah,
What was your
good
previous
times.
job? Don't ask me that question.
Right.
Please respect my privacy at this difficult time.
Right. Well, I gotta admit, Eric, we didn't bag on SCVMM quite as much as I thought we were going to, but we could go on. But I think maybe we move on to WAC now, right? Windows Admin
Yes, let's
Center.
do that.
So now we're getting into more of the modern management utilities, right? And like you were with SCVMM, Eric, when it came out, you were super excited. I was super excited when Windows Admin Center came out. I'm like, cool, great. We have a new modern web-based management tool, like single pane of glass. This is going to be great. And it wasn't. I mean,
No.
it's okay. I'll say it's okay. I have a problem with some of the core design philosophy. I know you do too, Eric.
Yes,
Um,
100%.
I know with you, it's you'll get into this, I'm sure. Some of the resolution and the display stuff. The one thing that really bothers me with WAC, and I understand why it's like this, I just don't like it. There was a design decision with Windows Admin Center that it is intended to manage one entity at a time, whether that's a single server, a single cluster, or whatever. It's designed to manage one entity at a time. So if I'm in a situation where I need to make a change to 20 Hyper-V hosts, and it's at the Hyper-V at the hypervisor level, I can't do that from one single UI. I have to go to this server, log in, make sure I'm logged into it. Because if I haven't saved my credentials, I have to log into it every time. Log into it, make the change, move to the next one, make the change, move to the next one, make the change, and no thanks. I'm getting PowerShell out in that situation, right?
And even
So,
though I would almost say like you should anyway, there's a difference. So like if you start in Hyper-V Manager or Failover Cluster Manager where you can list multiple hosts or multiple clusters in that,
yep.
they're fast. So once you get connected to it, boom, you're connected and you can just up, right down all of them. Still
Yep.
think PowerShell's better if you're going to do the same thing on 20 boxes. If you're doing that
Agreed.
by hand, especially, and maybe you can do it. I work with some people who they can do that. They can just machines, man, they can go right down and do the same thing 80 times in a row. I can't do the same thing 3 times in a row. So this is
Neither
just
can
bad for me.
I
But you
don't
do have
trust
an
myself
extender.
either.
I know better. I've learned, and this is
Yep.
one of the reasons I got good at scripting is you just don't want me doing repetitive labor. It's not good for anyone. And uh, with Windows Admin Center, the delay from going from the host that you're on to the next one on the list, especially for a guy like me, is like, I don't remember why I'm here. I may not remember which host I wanted to go to by that point. Where was I? Who am I? Where? It just, no, it's really slow. And
Yeah.
it's because they tried to do too much.
Yeah.
And that I will die on that hill. It's not that there's anything bad. It's just they tried to do way too much and way too just, it's not good.
Right. The one thing I do feel like Windows Admin Center did well, that I it had a lot of potential in this area, was how they made it extensible via third-party vendors. So a
Yes.
vendor could make a Windows Admin Center plugin essentially, right?
And
And
several
pull their
have.
function. They have, correct. But I haven't, and granted, let me preface this by saying I haven't looked at the plugin section of WAC anytime recently, but I get the feeling there was a flurry of third-party add-ons. I don't think there's been a whole lot since then. I don't know. Have you seen anything there, Eric?
I have not been paying attention to Windows Admin Center, so I would not be a good witness to answer either way on that one. I know, like, because for a project I was getting there and going through, and like there were more in there than I remembered just a few years prior. So
Yeah.
I think some people are kind of like, yeah, let's get on board and supercharge this. And yeah, it's going to be fine as long as you want to manage one machine or one cluster. Yeah, it's going to be
Yeah.
great.
That'd be fine.
Actually, it's just trying to manage two is unbelievably harder.
Yeah, it's frustrating. Even at the cluster level, you don't have all the same controls right there at hand that you would in Failover Cluster Manager,
Right.
I mean, they're there, but they're buried down in the menus, and like, okay, if I need to, you know, make a setting at the at the host level, now I have to log into the server object, and yeah. So that's WAC, right?
And then my long-standing complaint is, so the first time I saw it was on the Microsoft campus on an 80-inch Surface Hub, and wow, it was pretty. And then I
Yep.
tried to put it on my laptop, and like, oh no, this is not okay. And so they have some nifty features in it. Like one of them is like, look, you can see your performance charts. And I actually got to a place like I can see exactly one chart, and I can either see the heading of the chart or the legend, but I can't get all of it on the same screen at the same time. And forget running in a window, because my first solution is, if I want to manage two hosts, I'll just open up two connections to WAC and put them side by side. No, no, because it's designed to run on an 80-inch screen, full, 100% all the
Oh, yeah.
space, and that has gotten better. It's still not good though. And it seems like I just am constantly complaining like you have to understand how people use this kind of stuff in the real world, what we're trying to do. One of the things that, and I would like to maybe, I don't know if we can do a poll or a feedback thing, but one of the things I think I have done almost every day of my career is a little task that someone else gave me the words. I didn't invent this phrase, called the stare and compare. What makes this one different from that one? Remember the game you used to play as a
Oh,
kid and
yeah.
all the little kids magazines, and you'd have to look at the two and what's different?
Yep.
I do that as an adult in IT all the time. The stare and compare. What's right? So in Windows Admin Center, you can't do that easily. It's horrible
Yeah.
because it was not designed for you to look at two things at once. And
Yeah, I got to the point where I would either go over to Hyper-V Manager or Failover Cluster Manager, or I would use PowerShell commands to output whatever I was trying to compare. I'd output it to a file and then compare them side by side that way. So
Mhm.
no easy way to do it in WAC though. That's for
Almost
sure.
impossible. And like the more you get it to where it's just so many things in there. They just like, are you all looking at your own work here?
Uh,
So
yeah, I was.
to roll that back, remember in the very beginning of this whole segment, we're like, Hyper-V Manager looks like it shows its age. But you know what? It all fits on one screen
It does,
easily. Easily. You have
and
plenty of real estate left over.
the UI is adaptive. You could shrink that window way down, and you still have most of the controls visible. MMC is really good about that.
Because it had to run on like 640 by 480 stuff.
Yep,
And
sure did.
and surprisingly, some people don't believe me on this, but like there are still those pull-out racks in data centers that like,
Oh yeah.
well, those are expensive. And well, this one's not great because it's only, well, I don't think there are any 640 by 480s anymore, but there's still some 800 by 600s out there,
Yep.
right? And MMC will work on that.
Yep.
But WAC isn't going to do that. It's barely going to show the server name in that.
Right.
That was me. But you get the drift, right? And of course they'd come back and go, well, this was really intended for you to manage from your desktop or your laptop. And like, all right, well, it needs to do a better job of respecting what I actually have on my desktop or my laptop, which is not, I, maybe I'm just old and I don't care, but the 4K stuff is not really appealing to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I like 4K for gaming, but that's for my standard desktop UIs. I mean, I'm recording this podcast on an Apple Studio display, and it looks incredible, right? But like, would I be any less productive with a 1080p screen? No, So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm with you on that one. So, well, the last management tool to talk about is Azure Arc. And I think I've said it a couple times. We need to have our friend Thomas Mao around to talk about Azure Arc. But this is kind of a new upcoming management solution in the Microsoft world. And, Microsoft has been pushing Azure over the last 10 to 15 years now, right? And so you can see this is their method for getting those getting us grumpy, stubborn on-premises admins into the cloud, right? And really what Azure Arc does, it's kind of an agent-based system where it allows you to pull in your local on-premises resources and have them appear inside of the Azure portal as Azure objects, and you can manage them in that way. And so it's especially useful for those organizations that already have some stuff in Azure, so you can kind of centralize management more into one portal. And so before this call, I got on and took a look at, all the different things that you can do with Arc and Hyper-V specifically. You can do all the server level management of the hosts themselves, like the CLI, GUI tools. You get the Azure portal and everything from there. The big one for me here that I find really useful is once you have an Arc enabled Hyper-V host inside of Azure, you can now use Azure Policy to assign policies to it. So from a governance perspective, that's super useful. You also get Azure Monitors, so you have baked-in monitoring inside your monitoring inside of your management tool. You have Azure Update Manager, which we can rewind back to the Windows Server Update Services episode you and I did, Eric. Azure Update Manager is one of the, I don't want to say new because it's been around for a little bit, but it's one of the new preferred mechanisms that Microsoft would like you to use instead of WSUS moving forward. But worth mentioning here because you do get that to help manage the hosts. I think what's more important here than the things you can do is the things you can't do with Arc and Hyper-V hosts. You can't build new VMs. You can't delete VMs. You can't resize. You can't move disks. You can't adjust networking. All those host level things, right? Now, sure, you could, you'd load up PowerShell and build VMs that way if you wanted to, but there's no way to do it right there within the Azure portal. I suppose maybe I haven't checked to see if it can use, if you could somehow deploy a VM from within Azure and choose the Arc-enabled Hyper-V host as the destination. I haven't looked at that recently. I don't believe it can do it yet, though. But that's Arc in a nutshell. Still early days, but for those people that are already using Azure, I think it's a no-brainer. Will it become the de facto management solution for Hyper-V? I don't think so. I think it will always be kind of an add-on in my mind, but that's just my opinion. Eric, what about you?
I haven't looked at it enough to say. I can tell you it's got some things on it that the fewer windows I need to open, the better. And if I can already do everything I need between Hyper-V Manager and Failover Cluster Manager, and I can't replace either of those tools with this one, then I'm not going to use it at all.
Yeah. Yep. That's very true. And you can't to date based on what is, in Microsoft Learn, and what I've seen of the tool itself. I think the big thing that Microsoft wanted to do is kind of the minimum viable product with Arc. And again, I don't know this for a fact. It's just conjecture on my part. But I remember when it first came out, the big button they kept pressing over and over again in marketing was Azure policy, Azure policy, Azure policy. So they're on a big governance kick in the cloud. They have been for a while. But I think that was one of the big driving needs, right? Is we can apply governance and management policies via Azure policy, which is cool. Yes, I will say, and this is not so much a Azure or a Hyper-V specific thing, but this is one thing I do kind of nerd out about with Azure Arc. I actually did a session for PowerShell Summit back in 2024 on the secure management of secrets during automated processes. And anybody who's tried to handle secrets in scripts and automated processes, it's not a super easy thing to do, right? It's surprisingly easy to leak secrets in automated processes. But one of the cool things with Azure Arc is you compare Azure Arc with managed identity in Microsoft Entra, and now you can have on-premises resources pull secrets out of Key Vault in a secure manner without having to do password authentication. It's the device is seen as a trusted device if you set it up that way, and it can just pull whatever secret that it needs to pull for the automated process. So, like I said, that's not a Hyper-V specific thing, but I do like that about Arc, is that it enables use cases like that. So anyway, yeah, I think that about wraps it for today, Eric. Anything you want to add before we kind of sign off on this one?
Do you know where we are on this Hyper-V management via Arc? Like, how many iterations are we in? Do you know? I say that because there's a long-standing trend at Microsoft that has gone back through the Gates era even. Microsoft usually fumbles until about version 4 or 5.
Very true.
And then somewhere around there, 5 or 6, that's the version you want. So, Arc may yet be the thing.
I know it's
but
not.
I don't know that.
It's not 4th or 5th iteration yet. I know that. If I had to guess,
on the same note,
2 or maybe 3
hasn't held up to that well either. They've kind of gone away from making it easy to figure out which one is version 4, which one is version 5. So
yeah,
I don't know. But like PowerShell, man, version 5 is the killer. Everything since version 5 has basically been version 5 with more stuff. So,
Yep, for sure. The one thing I want to make sure we mention, Eric, we did an episode on Azure Local. If you're not familiar with what Azure Local is, go all the way back to our second episode. It's labeled as episode 1 because we started at episode 0, just FYI. But be sure to check that out. At a high level, Azure Local is it's rebranded Azure Stack HCI. It's Hyper-V, storage spaces direct, software-defined networking, all in a nice, neat package with a bow on it. You put Arc on it. It sits in your data center. Everything that we've talked about today applies, to my knowledge, Eric. I don't know if you've heard anything else, but to my knowledge, it
No,
all applies to Azure
the
Local.
the point of Azure Local is that you can run actual Azure services in your
Correct.
data center. That's the purpose of it, but the underlying tech is all the things that we have talked about.
Yep, correct. Yeah, Azure Local, you can do Kubernetes clusters. Not just Kubernetes clusters, AKS, Azure
Yes.
Kubernetes Service on
Azure
premise.
Virtual Desktop now. I can't remember. There's a
AVD.
ton of them, but
Yeah.
things that you might, well, I don't really want that latency between me and the Azure centers. Okay, cool. Bring it in house.
Yep, exactly.
That's what Azure Local's for. So,
but yeah, I wanted to make sure we mentioned that before we sign off. So, well, with that, Eric, I think we're wrapped. I feel like we can keep going on this one for a while, but maybe we'll do a part 2 later on down the line.
Yeah, let's digest this one and give us some feedback, and then
That's right. And you did mention a poll. I know Spotify can do polls. We'll try a poll with this one. So hopefully, folks, if you're listening on Spotify, there might be a poll associated with this episode. Hopefully, if I was able to get it working, it should work. I see the poll button every time I publish an episode, so I can't imagine it's that hard. So we'll see. Anyway, well, that's Eric. Want to apologize? I don't know what I'm apologizing for, Eric. I want to say thank you for being on the show today. It's always good having you, my friend.
Thank you. Great to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Folks, appreciate you spending some time with us as well. Hopefully you found value in today's episode. And if you did, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. I didn't say smash. Just
yes, you did.
I said hit that like and subscribe button. So I'm trying to be a little bit different than everybody else that says smash that like and subscribe button. Anyway. But yeah, other than that, be sure to check out our newsletter again, newsletter.sysadminweekly.com. With that, we'll let you get back to your day. And thanks for spending another episode with us here at SysAdmin Weekly. And we'll see you again next week. Have a good one.